they just teach you the technical side of things, at least in computer science, right? They teach you the formulas, they teach you those things, the algorithms, right? But they really don't teach you to be creative or to have grit along with the creativity, right? A lot of times I think in schools, they teach you the foundations, quote unquote, to be a slave. I'm sorry, but this is pretty much what it is. Just go into the corporate world, know your stuff, listen to the rules, follow the rules, stay in your little box. But obviously you can't stay in your own box as an entrepreneur.
All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the 1% Podcast. I'm your host, Vin, and
I'm Shane.
And today we're joined by my man, Marcus. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for welcoming me to the show. As a guest, I'm very astounded to be a part of this podcast. You know, my first one ever, so
congrats!
Nervous and excited.
Popping the cherry.
Yes, it is.
That's it. Well, I tell you, man. So for the listeners, a little bit of context here is I met Marcus. We were at a really cool, like a very intentional networking lunch. So I know this guy. He's a very big connector of people, and his big thing is he likes bringing interesting people together. So we're sitting there with this guy who manages like $1 billion hedge fund. We're sitting there with some other people, and then Marcus was sitting next to me. So I was talking to him. He's got a really interesting story, a really interesting background. I was like, man, you got to be on the show and share a little bit of that with our listeners. So even though it's your first, we're happy to have you here. But with that being said, man, I'm not going to give anything away. Why don't you please share with our listeners a little bit more of like who you are, what you're building, and I guess what you're most excited about.
Yeah, so to keep everybody, all the listeners understanding this, I am very young, so I'm still 21. So age does not matter, right? That's the first thing I do want to say. I know Vin said that to me too a while back. So, you know, this is something that I want to quote for everybody here. So I am still in college. I'm a senior studying computer science and math. I'm about to graduate in actually next week, which is really exciting.
Nice.
So I'm definitely done with the whole college state shebang. And pretty much right now what I'm working on is a tech consulting firm, right? And our focus is on AI automation and workflow. I believe that right now with the whole AI boom, this is a perfect way to capture and utilize my technical skills to help other businesses grow and expand in that type of scenario, right? So a little bit background about me. It all really started with actually my dad passing away when I was a junior in high school. So I've always loved problem solving. But pretty much it was more on the, I guess you could say, physical engineering side, right? So which is like building bridges, you know, building physical things, right? But my dad was a computer scientist, and for me, right, after he passed away, I wanted to continue that legacy. So that's when I made the switch. Really late in my career, I started learning all by myself, senior year before ChatGPT. So it was just a bunch of textbooks, readings, and things like that, and kind of YouTube searching, right? So that's pretty much how I started. I built a bunch of different projects. I've known that I want to go into the entrepreneur space right off the bat once I switched off, because I realized that, you know, the opportunity to build things off the top of your mind is pretty much endless with computer science, right? Just everything is technological right now. And so I wanted to jump into that opportunity right away, right? So my first startup, quote unquote, was a newsletter I was building out with my friend. It was called Daybreak. It did not end up going very far at all. It was not even in beta series when everything just went crashing down, right? So, you know, there's definitely a lot of failures coming in that helped me build who I am today, right? So that was my first one, but I jumped and I was resilient and went right away into Hackathon, where I won it, which was a Meta Disney Figma hosted hackathon. The Meta team reached out to me to build out and flush out the app fully, right? And that was where I jumped completely into the whole startup space. Like that was like, we released beta, we had partnerships, you know, and that was my freshman year, I think summer, which all of this went up, right? Built all those things out, partnerships. I guess we ran a little bit of the numbers. We got a little bit of money from it, But the issue was because I was completely new, I did not think that I needed investors. That was a big mistake, especially with the whole, like my app was a social media app, right? And it definitely needed funding, right? And so we ran into funding issues quite often, realized that this was not making enough money to cover our current expenses. And because at that time I was like, I want to do everything else by myself. And that's where I made a mistake. And so it ended up going downhill from there, right? Just because of the funding expenses coming out of my pocket, and my co-founder's pocket, right? So right after that, which is really funny, I jumped into, I was like, hey, I'm doing tutoring for people and I love education. I've been tutoring people since I started. I think that's the best way to actually hone in your skills. And that's how I grew my skills really rapidly, starting off very late in the I guess you could say stage. Because I know most of my friends who have done computer science have done computer science since they were young. You know, they were like, in middle school and they're like, yeah, I've been coding stuff. And I was just like, wait, I started coding when I was a senior in high school, you know, from scratch. I didn't even know how to write hello world at that time. And so, you know, I realized that that was a great space to expand in, which is education technology and also education. So we built out a whole tutoring platform. We also built out education tech inside of it. And this one we ran for roughly a year and a half, which was amazing. We got a lot of revenue out of it. We're making probably over 5-6 figures a month in it, roughly between 5, sometimes 6 figures a month in it. It was an amazing space to grow into, but me being like one of those people who love expanding, right, realized that, hey, you know, I want to branch out. Instead of just helping people tutor, I want to start building fun technology completely, right? And so I definitely think I could have just continued with it, but after my co-founder left, things went a little bit downhill with it because I did a whole rebranding. I wanted to branch out and make it more specific, which did not end up as where I wanted to go. And a lot of our customers eventually left because we were only focused on computer science instead of like the generalized tutoring platform that we were originally, right? And so from there, that's where I'd made my exit in that company, right? But obviously, I took a lot of profit out of it, and that's where I utilized a lot of the profit into building this new one, right? So fast forward, this is like kind of the 3-year trajectory that I was in, and then the past summer, I interned at Goldman as a trader, right? And so there I built my business acumen and kind of my kind of understanding of how big companies work and kind of deal business, right? So, and also their infrastructure mainly, which was the coolest thing, and connections. I met the brightest people there ever. I cannot say less about how grateful I am to be in that space. And so fast forward, this is my senior year now, starting off, and I was like, I wanted that dream, right? I wanted that dream to build and help companies grow. And that's where I started this tech consulting firm, right? And here we are.
So I absolutely love your story. And for any of you listeners that may be a little confused, not that you should be, usually you might be used to, at this point, our caliber of client being those 1%ers that have done some big things and had some ginormous companies or are some of the most influential people on the world. And then you're like, well, why is this guy here? He's 21 and he's figuring it out. But what I love about Marcus and what I think makes him a 1%er is that he's been figuring it out, building businesses and giving it his all since he was basically in high school. And he has an exit even at this young age. And so to me, I love his story because I think he is a 1%er in the mindset, in the way he shows up, his work ethic. And I mean, I think he's somebody phenomenal. So for anyone who might be wondering, this is what it looks like to feel or be extremely driven and want to push forward in life. I freaking love what you're doing, man.
Thank you so much.
Marcus, it's a pretty awesome story. Regardless, you took something that was a need and you figured it out, and I think that's a big step into the entrepreneurship. I love that you actively admitted about your failures, about what went wrong, and essentially you trying different things. And even if it didn't fail, or if it did fail, you learn from it. So my first question is tech. You're going into tech consulting into a world right now that is probably the craziest time for technology, especially with all of these different AI courses and tools that are out there. I've been involved with AI for now 19 months. So just, a speck on the wall compared to you. But I just want to know, what exactly do you plan on doing? Is it essentially creating like an LMS model? Is it something similar where you're actually hiring like developers and you're teaching business owners how to do it? Because with all of these, something new with AI, especially with OpenAI, and everything's open source right now, you can learn every single thing about offsetting and creating efficiency with Make AI, Notion AI, Notebook LLM, ChatGPT, Manus, whatever it is the case may be. But the thing is, you have to actually learn it, taking their course, getting certified, or hiring somebody who knows how to do everything. So there's multiple routes and avenues that you can actually take, especially in this tech world that we're in. What's your plan of attack?
Yeah, so my biggest plan of attack as a tech consulting company is doing the technical audit coming into the company, and kind of running and understanding what their technical deficiencies are, right? We understand that all big businesses definitely have some, especially from small to medium-sized companies, right? So that's my kind of target, right? Really understanding that, from small to medium-sized companies, they normally don't have the amount of funding that they need, and their expansion is tremendous, right? Like if you take kind of a company with a market cap or a revenue model or a revenue growth of 1 million to 5 million, right? They can definitely easily expand into 10 million and 100 million pretty fast, right? Especially with the automation and workflows that can be put in place, right? And that's kind of where I come in, understanding where they need that kind of workflow and kind of building that custom AI workflow into their kind of company, right? But besides that, we do build out fun projects internally to release. So for example, we recently built out a RAG model, right? And so what the RAG model pretty much does, right? It's for law firms specifically, is that we're able to integrate, right, into their personal database, right? As well as, hey, if you want to upload documents into it, we can retrieve and understand the documents itself. So it's a lot faster. So it's like research based, right? I know there's a lot of companies that do it out there. There's a lot of startups that have done this, right? But not at the scale of hundreds or millions of documents, right? Because the issue with this is that there is definitely the overhead of kind of proprietary information, right? How do you access or gain access to that proprietary information? So what we've actually developed and understood is that, hey, if we deploy it on premise, right, we are not touching any of the data, right? The cybersecurity is already there because it's on their site, right? On their kind of terms, right? So everything is locked in. And so we can actually deploy this, run millions or billions of documents on it, right? And have the retrieval process and also the research be enhanced tremendously from this, right? So that's like one cool project that we've been working on. And we've been trying to pitch this as well, right?
We tried to do something because in my company, we deal with very big sized documents. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions of leads that have personal information, social accounts, name, email, phone number, where we utilize it as an internal lead scraper. And the biggest thing that we found that was the most difficult wasn't the storing, it was actually opening it. When you have something that's over 100 gigabytes to open, where are you going to open it? You can't open it in Excel. You can't open it in, a G sheet. You actually have to create something through like custom coding to actually store the file and then being able to open it. And it requires like a third party service provider to actually upload that type of information. It's pretty crazy. So I'd be curious to see exactly how you do that for, even sensitive information as well. I'm glad that you mentioned the cybersecurity aspect because that would probably be my very first question. Okay, so bringing it back to including Vin into this conversation as well.
No, don't worry about it.
It sounded like this original tech audit is almost a business audit where I don't know if you're getting the foundation down and essentially saying, okay, like let's choose my company, for example. I have over 500 employees that are there. I have a C-suite of 39 managers. And essentially what I've been through something like this before. And I forgot the guy's name that does, I forgot it was called the Chris Voss's co-associate that essentially went to this direction.
Is it Jonathan Smith or no?
Yes.
He's
Yes.
doing EOS.
EOS, but that same principles of EOS is what it sounded like what Marcus was doing, is essentially analyzing the entire business model as far as the tree, what's broken down, and how can we increase efficiencies. And then also after it's all broken down, where we can alleviate the waste, they're also putting together a marketing strategy, a more prospecting strategy to get more income through there. Is it kind of are you familiar with the EOS model? Is it kind of complementary to that model?
I wouldn't say it's completely coincide because we're more on the technical side of things, less of
Can
the
you
marketing
elaborate
side
a
of
little
things.
bit more on the technical side of it?
Yes, for sure. So we go in, right? And for example, if we find out, right, for example, in these law firms, right, we know that they have a lot of manual research that needs to be done, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, how many hours does it take for a lawyer normally to do all this research? We figured out that it normally takes roughly 20 plus hours a week, right? Just taken away just to find case studies or documents related to their case, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is completely absurd because now we're in a technical revolution, right? And we can definitely make this a lot faster. So
Mm-hmm.
pretty much this is what we think about, and kind of we figured out that the best way to do this is using a retrieval kind of AI system, right? That is able to be like similar to a chat, right? Or a ChatGPT. You can type up, hey, this is my document, my client information, right? I need to figure out court cases that are really similar to this, or is there any past court cases that are relevant to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or even further, you can actually take on, right? Because a lot of times lawyers are billed, right? Depending on every single time. And if there's multiple trials to it, they're probably billed on multiple trials. So you can take that as well and say, okay, how many billable hours has this person kind of came up to, right? So if, for example, if each one is $500 and there's 3 type of court cases, you can just search up the person and figure out that it's 1,500, right? So this makes the process so much more efficient and faster, right? So instead of taking hours a day, pretty much doing the research, you can take on maybe like couple 10 minutes to figure out a bunch of these documents that are really much needed, right? And in that case, you can pretty much focus completely on the business, right? Instead. And I could think of this like that because lawyers are pretty much independent, right? Even though they are part of a law firm, right? They run independently off of each other, right? Like they're their own CEO, they manage their own business, they do their own thing, right? So
I love the fact they're even starting with, something that's very niche specific, but connecting AI with somebody's database that has taken them years and years to essentially build, and doing that manual research to essentially come up with it within a matter of minutes. It's how do you say no to something like that?
exactly. So I think that's like the biggest thing too, when it comes to figuring out kind of the pain points of the business, right? Figuring out where specifically do they need that efficiency boost, right? Sometimes it could come within 5% efficiency boost, right? But in this case, it's pretty much almost 70%, right? We're cutting down their time from 20 plus hours, almost to a couple hours a week only, right? And that's only if they need a couple hours a week, right? To do the research itself. Most of the time you just type into the chat and, it works pretty fast and smooth, right? And so the reason why, how we differentiate ourselves, at least from other apps, right? Because there is an app called Harvey AI. It's built by another law firm, right? Is, like I said, the documents or the number of documents that you can upload and things like that, right? Because Harvey AI is an open, like, I guess you can an open platform for everybody, right? And in that case, as a lawyer, how are you worried that your document is getting stolen, things like that, right? So that's why, as a tech consulting firm, we can come in and just do the deployment on premise. So they don't have to worry about, hey, would I be taking some other person's information? Will my information be leaked, right? And things like that. So
I didn't even think about that. I think that on-premise is very crucial and key. I'm wondering what storage you're essentially going to be putting it on for them to easily research it on, but that doesn't matter. I actually think I have a pretty big client referral for you. And I know this is not the time or place, but they're integrating. It's a big law firm, and he's got over 150 lawyers underneath him. And essentially they get thousands of emails that come in So essentially what we've set up for him is as these emails come in, it actively utilizes Make to kind of pull from the history from their existing database. So they actually can get like a customer profile. And with that customer profile, based on, where they're currently at with the model, we'll send them an email to either book an appointment, send a payment link, very basic stuff, to get it sent out. But something like what you're doing is a complete layer up compared to just an automatic reach out tool that people are, emailing already for inquiries.
Yes, thank you. That is really cool, actually. So you also do like AI workflow, pretty much AI assistance, right? If I'm
We'll talk offline about this one, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shane, give a little shout for any of the new listeners, because we keep getting new subscribers every day. They may not know what you're doing. Give a little shout to what you're doing too.
So I own a virtual assistant company. That's the main premise here. So essentially, if you're looking to offset those tedious, mundane tasks that nobody likes to do, you essentially can offset them to a virtual assistant. How we're essentially different is we are creating an LMS model internally to train all of our virtual assistants on all of these different AI tools, like the ones mentioned before, Notebook LM, Notion AI, Make AI. There's a million of them, and that's the crazy thing. We're going to be customizing, creating our own certifications, and then we're going to be reselling that MLS model to corporations and enterprises. And within the last 19 months, we've built these AI agents that can essentially email about 80,000 emails coldly on a monthly basis, especially with Microsoft and G Suite. What they've done now is making it almost impossible to do cold emails. And then these AI agents, which a lot of people are doing as far as calls are concerned, but our proprietary system, it's almost unreal. It's not matchable. So essentially we integrate with customers' databases, whatever they need, appointments set, emails that are essentially automated, more booked appointments that are being done on pretty much a front end basis. And then on the back end, teaching all of our virtual assistants, and then soon customers on all of these AI courses, just kind of an added bonus.
Yeah. My man's crushing it. For all you new listeners, you should check out Shane's stuff too.
Thanks for the shout out.
Of course. So, Marcus, I'm curious. Shane has the business side of things handled because he knows more about that than I do. But I'm more curious on the internals. Our audience, our followers, our listeners, all these amazing people that support us on our journey here. They are people who are entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, and honestly, just people who are high performers of all caliber. The biggest question that I always have, and I always love to figure out, is, what kind of a mindset does it really take to be in this driver's seat, to build something? I mean, your story, and this is, again, I love your story just because of the fact that at 21, you've already done more than most people will do by the time they retire and say goodbye to their time on this planet. And there's a phenomenal mindset in there. There's a phenomenal emotional resilience, mental toughness. And I want to learn a little bit more about that. And I want to maybe see if there's some tips that we could give to our listeners who might be feeling stuck or scared, or who maybe they're already in the thick of it and they're going through the motions. What has been some of the biggest and most helpful things when you're coming up on problems, or you're just going through this day to day of being an entrepreneur and balancing school and, exiting a company, all this stuff? I mean, tell us a little bit more about the internal world.
Yeah, so it's definitely not a walk in the park. I tell you that. The amount of times I feel like my world is ending right before me is, I can't even say. It's just insane, Just even, I think like 2 days ago, I was just like, oh my God, what is going on? I need to figure something out. So I think a lot of times is the first thing, which I think most people, it's the most generic thing, is pretty much find an outlet, right? Do something that makes you happy, right? Like for me, I talk to my girlfriend, or like I go walk my dog, work out, things like that. Have a source of outlet that relieves stress, right? That stress,
Love that.
like, one of the biggest things that I think stops most people is the stress, right? You feel overwhelmed. And when you feel more overwhelmed, it just builds up exponentially to the point where like, I'm going to give up. Right. But, so try not to get to that point, because, once you get to that point, it's really hard to go back, right? Because once you do that, it's like a burnout point and you're just like, I'm done. I'm sick of everything. I want to quit, right? So definitely finding an outlet is one biggest thing, right? The second one is my favorite, which is every single time I come up with a big problem that I really want to I'm just banging my head against pretty much a brick wall, right? I go out for a walk, right? A nice walk, normally with music or without music, something like that. But just to have a nice walk, fresh air, just think about the specific problem, take away the space, that you're currently in, really helps you or helps me specifically, right? And kind of figuring out what the problem is, what the issue is, and how can I solve it, right? And that's actually where I come up with the greatest ideas, right? And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs tell you too. I think most people tell you that, hey, you come up with the brightest ideas when you're least expecting it, right? And that walk is that least expected area, right? I'll just be walking and boom, another idea came up, or boom, I solved this new problem, right? Or boom, I know how to solve this new coding aspect, right? And that's where a lot of times, at least for me, and I tell my team all the time, hey, if you're stuck in a problem, don't be in the office. Don't sit at home and sulk about it, right? Go out for a walk, do something, go cook, right? And that would clear your headspace and help reduce stress. And then you can come back with a fresher mind. Whether you came up with the solution or not, at least with the clear mind and a clear headspace, it'd be a lot easier to attack the problem.
Wise words for a young man.
Oh, yeah. I get my best ideas in the gym. I work out relatively close to the start of my day. And when I'm in there and my heart rate hits 170 at some points. Oh, wow. So I work out hard. And so, you have that I don't know, that change in your physiology, the moment where music is drowning out everything and all you can focus on is like your breathing. And then all of a sudden the ideas start flowing. And I think when we don't really take a lot of time to create that space, and especially as entrepreneurs, it's necessary. So many entrepreneurs think, well, if I take time out of not working, it's a waste of my time. I could be working with that time that I'm not working. And it's kind of a phallic thought process because realistically, it's actually diminishing returns, right? You're going to be less productive. You're going to be in this space where you're hitting your head against the wall. And this is the problem a lot of entrepreneurs have because we grit through most things. We muscle through most things that we stopped and we forget that actually you'll have the ability to push through more if you're not always trying to push through. Instead, you maybe take a step back and realize you're on a wall, but you could climb over the wall instead of trying to punch through it. So I absolutely love that you've already come to some of these realizations.
Can I add one?
I think this is phenomenally important. Yeah. What do you got, Shane?
Can I add one? Because it's very important to the all the success that I've accrued over my years. You have to have the one. This is probably the most important thing. I don't think I've ever mentioned this before. You have to have the one. You have
like Ed Milet's the one?
Maybe. I love Ed Milet, but I don't know if we're referring to the same topic here for the Ed Milet's the one. So I don't know how you guys operate the walks, the workouts, the cooking. They're all phenomenal ideas. I do those as well. But for some reason, when I speak this out loud to somebody who is just going to listen and give me actually good questions, it's my wife. My wife will listen to any of my problems. And even if she doesn't have good advice, I'm hearing it out loud. And for some reason, me saying all this out loud and her asking great, compelling questions instead of just trying to solve it, just asking me questions, is able for me to work itself out. Doesn't happen all the time, but most of the time it does. She's like a perfect devil's advocate. And I think that's kind of what you need. So I think it's very important to have that one person that will not try to solve your problems, that will listen intently and ask the right types of questions. I think it's very important to have that.
Yeah. For those of you that don't have a wife like Shane's, hit me up. That's why I have a job.
It's a very good point.
Yes. No, I 100% agree with Shane because a lot of times, when I run into some issues, sometimes I would voice it to my girlfriend or something like that. And, sometimes I'm not going to say that, hey, you're going to always have a partner to talk to, right? At least what they taught us in classes. If worst case scenario, you're solo, and you need to just go through it, talk to a rubber ducky, talk to the mirror itself, right? Just look at yourself in the mirror, talk to it, and you'll realize, hey, these problems, maybe I come up with solutions myself, or, you know, in my case, I talk to my girlfriend, she has pretty much insight in it too, right? Any type of advice or something like that. And it always works, you know? So
yeah, there's a lot of times my girlfriend will ask me who I'm talking to. Because she's like, I thought you weren't on a call. I'm like, I'm not. She's like, well, who the hell are you talking to? I'm like, you should know this by now. I'm talking to myself. Like,
You know that Albert Einstein quote, right? It's not crazy or insane to talk to yourself. It's crazier or insane to answer yourself.
what's the point of talking to yourself if you're not going to find the answers?
Well, that was just a one-sided combo. You're supposed to think of the answers in your head while communicating it out loud.
Yeah, but it sounds better. It sounds better. It's more real when you actually verbalize. Listen, Albert Einstein is dead. I'm not. So I would say I'm doing better than he is. You should listen to me.
Whoa.
Yes.
Whoa. Oh, man.
This is great. So, Marcus, I'm curious on this.
Yes.
As somebody who has worked on a few businesses, failed in a few businesses, had a successful exit, and is still in college, what do you think is something that's massively invaluable that you've learned through your experience that you could have never gained from a college education?
There is a lot, to be honest. there's more than I can actually say on this one podcast, but I think the most important one is I think this is the foundation for all types of entrepreneurs, right? It sounds maybe a little bit corny, but it's pretty much creativity, right? And grit that comes along with the creativity, right? Because I think a lot of times schools, shout out to NYU, but also not shout out to NYU, don't like kick me out or remove my diploma, but you know,
you got 1 week.
Yeah, exactly. But
not the right time to be downplaying NYU.
Exactly. So
like you just like screw the school now.
Oh my God, yeah. So
it's okay. This won't be out for 2 months. You'll graduate by then.
Okay, that's good. You know, because I think school teaches you great skills, right? But it's very niche based in a sense where they just teach you the technical side of things, at least in computer science, right? They teach you the formulas, they teach you those things, the algorithms, right? But they really don't teach you to be creative, right? Or to have grit along with the creativity, right? A lot of times I think in schools, they teach you the foundations, quote unquote, to be a slave. I'm sorry, but this is pretty much what it is, right? You go into the just go into the corporate world, know your stuff, listen to the rules, follow the rules, you know, stay in your little box, right? But obviously you can't stay in your own box as an entrepreneur. You always would have to step out of it, right?
Good for you.
No matter how many times, like, you know, you think that, okay, I need to stay in this box, but it conforms your creativity, right? And creativity is where you are able to develop solutions to the problems at hand, right? In that school, at least what I've done projects all the time, they would always be like, oh, stay in this box. They give you a template. They give you an outline. They give you TAs. You know, there's all rigid, right? It's not fluid where, you know, you can try this thing out. You can try this thing out. It's never like that case, right? It's always like, hey, we need to grade you on this. So everybody follows that little direct pipeline, right? But even when I say, hey, can I try something else new, right? Can I try developing this? Can I develop this? Do it on your own terms outside, right?
Yeah.
And so in that case, I really believe that building your own things, starting new things, you know, don't ever be afraid just to give it a shot, right? In that case, you're stepping out of that box that society has built for you, right? And enables you to come up with fun things, and maybe you can even excel in those fun things, right, in the future. So I think that's something that I definitely learned as I grew, because I knew even in high school too, that high school is all about, oh, taking your exam, focus on this. And it's just repetitive stuff. As long as you can sit there and memorize, you basically ace the class, right?
Oh, yeah.
But the real world is not even near that way. You can't just memorize something and just, hey, this is you know, you make $1 billion. No, that's not how it is, right? So I think that's something that definitely is needed, you know, in the world, at least in school. I want to implement, hey, some type of creativity into it, but, you know, that would be probably the coolest thing.
Such great advice. With this technology world, those are the three things that we talk about, like teaching our kids is, I mean, grit just stands alone, doesn't even need a definition. You get it. Grit, creativity, and entrepreneurship are the three things that, even with AI and how advanced it's coming, and especially with robotics to soon follow, those are three things that you should be teaching your kids. Because my son, who's 3, and Vin's daughter, who's almost 2,
Three.
2, 3.
Three.
Oh my goodness gracious, growing up on me. So both of our kids will never work a regular job in their life. You look at the blue collar industry and even the white collar industry in 13, 14 years. No way. Entrepreneurship, creativity. This is the foundation and fundamentals that I'll be teaching my kids. That was phenomenal advice.
Yeah. I always found it funny because not only was I never good at math, but I would somehow do the work. I would do the work wrong and I would get the right answer. And then I would get like
Showing your
1/4
work?
credit. Yeah. Well, no, I showed the work and they were like, literally, dude, I would get notes on my math tests and it would say, I don't know how you've arrived here. You did all the work wrong. And like, I would write it out because you had to show your work. And they were like, you did all the work wrong, but you got the right answer. And then they would do like, if it was a 4-point question, they give me 1 point because I got the right answer. And I'm like, but that doesn't make any sense because I got the right answer. And they're like, yeah, but you didn't get the right answer doing the work the way you were supposed to do it. It's like, but I got the right answer. And you're 100% speaking truth. Even though that happened to me in high school, that's still something that would happen even in, current jobs or just in general, right? Because you go to a job, you get a 9 to 5, people are just, hey, do this. These are your responsibilities. This is what you're supposed to do. And then don't do anything else. And then you will get your 40-hour week, your vacation, your weekends, your nights, whatever you want. And you can never really be an entrepreneur like that. You can never be somebody that's going to create something of value if you're just always doing what you're told. So I think that's one of the best pieces of advice that any entrepreneur out there can listen to is figure out how to get into your creativity. Do you have a way that you like to get into a creative state aside from, maybe taking the walks when you feel stressed, or how do you inspire creativity in your life?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I do, I watch Alex Hormozy. But besides that, I think kind of watching things or doing things that kind of initiate that creative state, which is like drawing, right? I don't draw, but I know like some people do drawings to initiate their creative state. For me, right, I code random projects on the side. That is how I initiate that creative state. Or even reading random, like I guess you could say like LinkedIn newsletters about like, oh, what has new that just came up, right? Those things just incite creativity because, reading futuristic books as well, right? I think anything that kind of boosts creativity is pretty much stepping outside of the box, like I said. And to step outside the box, you have to understand what is outside of the box, right? Whether it is crazy out of the blue, like, oh, some sci-fi scenario where there's Star Wars ships, getting flown around, right? But something like that, maybe some people eventually, when we have the technology to build those things, right? Someone will be able to do that one day, right? And in order to do that, you would have to see, right? And you don't always have to see what you need to build, but kind of understanding that there is something outside of this just ones and zero binary black and white area is something that will definitely incite creativity, right? So watching a movie also, like some fun shows, some sci-fi shows with some lightsabers or something like that, always gets to me, right? So
we're going to resort back to this podcast in 20 years and we got lightsabers and Siths and ships flying all over. Yesterday was May the 4th. So, of course we watched a Star Wars. We watched Rogue One yesterday. Phenomenal movie. Shout out. Even though I'm not a big fan of the newer Star Wars, but I think you're spot on with that as far as the creativity element. Mine is the same thing. Man, I am just drawing a blank on who said what today, but they said you always have one creative gift, about you. It's up to you if you want to use it. But that's why entrepreneurs and successful people read books and they, consistently self-help because they get more creative ideas off of other successful people.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. Like I read books. I try to read books. I used to read books.
Audiobooks are the same thing.
Yeah.
Audiobooks are they count as reading.
Exactly. Or podcasts, actually. Listening to this podcast,
Amen.
especially too, I'm being 100% honest. I love listening to podcasts. That gives me so many new ideas. It enhances creativity because, you know what's around outside of this like box that you've that the society has brought to you, right? There is people outside like my age who have built one of the coolest things ever, like for example, Mark Zuckerberg. Facebook was not known before him, right? Yes, there was like other events and things like that were similar, right? But he had to step outside and understand, okay, there's something more to it, right? And for example, even Elon Musk, I think they're coming up with like completely self-driving cars. Where did that come, and where did that get inspired, right? Some sci-fi movies that Elon Musk actually said, like those books, those sci-fi things, eventually there's going to be flying cars, right? Eventually. So, they all come from somebody's dream or imagination, right? And sometimes you could put it into place as well, right? Into reality. So
I love it. Well, man, we are actually coming up on our last few minutes here. So I want to make sure that we get to the final questions that we have for you. So start with this one. The name of the podcast is The 1%, not because of the fact that we are billionaires, but because of the fact that we believe that there is a 1% version of everything in life. You could be a 1%er as long as you're working hard to excel at something and achieve greatly further than most of the populace would. And so with that being said, what is your version of a 1% life?
yeah, so I think the biggest version of my 1% life isn't about the monetary gains, right? Of course, making the money and things like that, everybody strives to be, a millionaire, a billionaire, right? But at the end of the day, I think most billionaires would tell you, right, that what they lack or they missed out on is pretty much like family, or love or things like that, that they were not able to target,
Are you
prior.
21? I don't think you're 21. There's no way you have this much wisdom at 20, and you don't have kids. And this is nuts. Keep going. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's it. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, I've read a lot of books and I've read a lot of podcasts, and I also realized, at a young age after my dad passed away too, that money should be an aid, right, to have fun, right? So no matter how much money you can make, 100,000, a million, 2 million, 1 billion, right? Money is just an aid for you to have fun. But I think something that, in my eyes, the 1% life is to enjoy time with my family and my loved ones to the fullest extent, right? Whether it is utilizing that money to travel with them, to, make more memories with them, I think that's where my 1% life is, right? So.
Love it. So I think both Shane and I fully agree with that because we're both family guys. We both have some kids, and we both love them. Shane, are you going to try for a third kid?
No.
Okay.
Two's enough. Done. We're playing man-to-man coverage. I'm not in for zone.
Oh my God.
I got it. Shane's on his last leg with kids, but he loves it, and so do I. So we both agree with you, and I have no doubt once you become a father, you're going to be a great one. Just make sure you always keep that mindset, and you'll always be a great dad. Okay, next question for you. I'm curious what we're going to get for this one. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Okay, this is I think there's a lot of pieces of advice. I say that all the time because there is almost a million pieces of advice that, I think you have to put together, right, to formulate one big one. But I think this whole podcast, we talked about creativity, right, and grit. And I think that's pretty much, I would bank off of that as my one piece of advice, right? Always stay creative. I know someone else said that. I forgot who it is, but you should always stay creative no matter what, right? Shane has said that too multiple times. Vin, you also said that too multiple times. I think that is something I really want to get out there in the new generation, especially with TikTok and all this social media and brainwash,
and
Yes, an AI, and there's no creativity anymore. People just follow whatever they say, whatever they do, just doom scroll. And I think that there is no more creativity out there, right? Even Y Combinator itself, they stated that, most of their companies that they're invested in are actually ChatGPT wrappers, which means that they're built off of ChatGPT, right?
Oh, God.
Not as saying that their ideas are garbage, right? They're definitely still really good ideas, right? But, I definitely think that creativity should be, more widespread, right? But beside that, I think, as all entrepreneurs would say, grit is one of the biggest things, right? But smart grit, right? Don't just bang your head against the wall a million times and expect an answer, right? Maybe sometimes take a step back as well, right?
I love it. That's a great answer. I think creativity is the premise of not only all good ideas, but a life fulfilled.
Yes.
Be creative about the things that give you troubles, even in your personal life. If your kid or your wife is nagging you in a way, think about what that means or how you can make it that they're not nagging you. If you have a problem with a friend, think about the creative way that maybe he's actually still a good friend, whatever the case might be. So yeah, we'll keep the premise of this as creativity.
Yes, because I definitely think that like there's multiple paths you can take in life, right?
Yeah.
I think every single step that you take comes with probably a billion paths that you could take, right? And just be able to understand that there is certain consequences that come with different paths also come with creativity, right? And I think that's something that, it formulates under the creativity umbrella. But, for example, if you do something wrong, right, and someone's nagging you, right, there's different paths you could take. You can yell at them, you can speak to them quietly, you can just not address the problem, but maybe you come up with a different path that helps you get to the solution that you want it to be, right? So it's very beneficial for life.
Yes, sir. I love it. Well, Marcus, last question for you, my man.
Mm-hmm.
How can people get in touch with you, be a bigger part of your community, utilize your consulting services, like shout yourself out?
Yeah, thank you so much, Vin, for all of this, and also Shane as well. So my plug is we have a website called LexorStrategies.com. We also have a LinkedIn right now. We don't have social media like Instagram or Facebook because we're B2B. We will eventually get to that stage. But, you can always feel free to reach me out at my current number, right, which is 646-887-7772, right? For any text or anything like that. I am planning to build a community eventually, right? Where I can talk a little bit more about tech consulting and AI and how this can actually benefit the whole world and kind of the steps to take to run this type of business right nowadays, right? Because obviously there is ChatGPT. People can always answer or ask questions to that, right? But the issue is that, as consultants, you give advisory, right? You can never take away the creativity. That's why I think it's also really important. So the overall thing here is creativity, because AI can't be as creative as a human, right? It's just scientifically proven, right? So if you have that, you basically will never be replaced, right?
I love it, man. Well, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom, your insights, and your creativity with us on today's podcast. Stick around for a minute after the show. I have another thing to tell you. And as always, people, there you have it. Go check out Marcus, go get in touch with him, see how you can work with him or just be a part of what he's building, because I think you won't want to miss it. Stay tuned for another episode of the 1% podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, share, subscribe, and comment. Let us know your thoughts on today's episode and if you learned a thing or two. And if you need anything, feel free to ask Shane or I. But as always, we're here. We're your hosts. I'm Vin. And
I'm Shane.
And that was Marcus. See you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.